Jai Radha Madhava. Okay. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Yashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Parikacharya Ashtottara Shri Srimad. His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. And Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Parikacharya Ashtottara Shri Srimad. His Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnavinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Srimad Bhagavad Gita Ki Jai. And Samaveda Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glory to the assembled devotees. All glory to the assembled devotees. All glory to the assembled devotees. All glory to Shri Guru and Gauranga. So I have text 24? Okay. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. On this 20th day of March, 2023 in San Diego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. I closed the kitchen door. Can you go and close it again? Okay. Yeah. Just request politely that they keep it closed because he's doing a major pot jug in there and it's great. Mukunda was actually getting it done, so. But things are balanced sometimes. Okay. So we're reading from Bhagavad Gita as it is, translation commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Still in chapter 13, Nature, the Enjoyer, and Consciousness. Text number 24 on page 556. Ya evam veti purusham prakritim chagunai saha sarvata vartamanopi nasabhuyo vijayate yehevam veti purusham prakritim chagunai saha sarvata vartamanopi nasabhuyo vijayate yevam veti purusham prakritim chagunai saha sarvata vartamanopi nasabhuyo vijayate yevam veti purusham prakritim chagunai saha sarvata vartamanopi nasabhuyo vijayate. Go ahead. You know? Go ahead.
So I'll read the translation.
No. Just read what we just read.
Okay.
Yahevam veti purusham prakritim chagunai saha sarvata vartamanopi nasabhuyo vijayate. Yahevam veti purusham prakritim chagunai saha sarvata vartamanopi nasabhuyo vijayate. Page 556. Go ahead. Yahevam veti purusham prakritim chagunai saha sarvata vartamanopi nasabhuyo vijayate. Yaha, anyone who, evam, thus, veti, understands, purusham, the living entity. Prakritim, material nature, cha and gunai, the modes of material nature. Saha, with, sarvata, in all ways, vartamanaha, being situated. Api, in spite of, na, never, saha, he, bhuyaha, again, abhijayate, takes his birth. One who understands this philosophy concerning material nature, the living entity, and the interaction of the modes of nature, is sure to attain liberation. He will not take birth again regardless of his present position. Purport. Clear understanding of material nature, the Supersoul, the individual soul, and their interrelation makes one eligible to become liberated and turn to the spiritual atmosphere without being forced to return to this material nature. This is the result of knowledge. The purpose of knowledge is to understand distinctly that the living entity has by chance fallen into this material existence. by his personal endeavor in association with authorities, saintly persons, and a spiritual master. He has to understand his position and then revert to spiritual consciousness or Krishna consciousness by understanding the Bhagavad Gita as it is explained by the personality of Godhead. Then it is certain that he will never come again into this material existence. He will be transferred into the spiritual world for a blissful, eternal life of knowledge. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshu Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance unto him and all members of Sri Parampara. To the cyclic succession. So we're coming to the end of this chapter, and Krishna is now giving an assurance that if one really understands the philosophy that he's explained in this chapter, concerning material nature, living entity, and the interaction of the modes of material nature, or nature, is sure to attain liberation. The living entity, I think he's also including here, just as he mentioned, is Kshetrajya, and then there's another Kshetrajya. So if one wants to, Kshetrajya means the knower of the field, that's the spirit, the soul. But Krishna says, and I'm also the knower of the field. And here, just in the last verse, he spoke about Upadrashta Anumanta Cha. He's describing the Supersoul. So all of this knowledge, now knowledge implies not just that I know what the Bhagavad Gita says, but that I take the knowledge within and I act on it. That's real understanding. Otherwise, it's just superficial knowledge, like you can, study for a test and you know it, and then you need to forget it because I passed the test or something like that. But the real test in real life is the point of death. If you really understand what has been explained in this chapter, then you'll understand the urgency of putting into practice, for instance, the 20 elements of knowledge described in verses 8 through 11, 8, 9, 10, 11, I think it is. So that's what it means to veti, to really understand. And what have we learned so far? Well, remember Arjuna's questions. He wanted to know what is the Kshetra, what is the field of activity, who is the Kshetrajya, the knower of that field, what is Prakriti, or this material nature, and who is what is Gyan, what is knowledge, and what is the goal of knowledge? I think these are the six divisions, if I remember. And Krishna systematically explained those in this chapter. So, and it's as everything in the Bhagavad Gita, there's an imperative to act on the knowledge once you get it. Again, it's the same idea. And then then you can say to be fully know it, because this is the kind of knowledge that if you, for instance, take up the process of devotional service, which is the end of the whole book and each chapter, that's also in this chapter, then your knowledge increases. It becomes realized knowledge. The theoretical knowledge turns into Vigyan. Vigyan means direct perception. I know I'm a soul, but to actually realize that at every moment and act on the basis of that reality is different. That comes after some practice and purification. But the foundation of our faith in the process and our faith in Krishna and the whole parampara and everything is based on our actually taking, I don't know what we call a leap of faith, but it means that to enter into the process of devotional service is based on this suspension of disbelief, because it's very easy to erect a framework of doubt and disbelief, and then just say, "Oh, that's just another, crazy religion that people have created in order to try to cope with material energy," or something like that. But the thing is, the imperative of the fact that we're not really that peaceful and happy here, and there's all of these problems, and death is looming, and with all of the efforts of Western philosophy and government and whatever else, it's still The birth, old age, disease, and death have not been solved. And so here's a philosophy and statements, and not only that, but the cyclic succession and of realized souls who have shown by their life and shown by their words and everything they do that they're on a different plane of existence. They're happy and peaceful in the same world that we find frightening and anxiety-filled. And so what is that? What is that they have? And clearly, when you think about it, it says, okay, here we have the writings. There's no question that Bhaktivinoda Thakur existed, Narottam Das Thakur existed, and there's historical accounts how they, and all the way up to the modern age, Srila Prabhupada, as you said, undoubtedly a historical figure. I saw him personally. And so what did they have? How did they live in this world in a way that contrasts ordinary people, And what possible motive would they have to spend, so much time and effort and sacrifice for spreading this word, spreading this mantra, which is, from the material point of view, mysterious. You can't fathom it. It obviously wasn't money and success. Prabhupada came to America with $6 or less or whatever, but nothing. And at an age when he was perfectly comfortable in Vrindavan, he could have just retired there like all his god brothers, and yet he didn't. And so it leads you to think, well, what was he feeling? What was he understanding that impelled him to do that? And not just him, but some of the others who sacrificed in our line. Anyway, there's a certain point of saying, okay, I'm seeing, a certain lifestyle or something attracts me. Some verse or some experience that you have, and let me try it. Let me try it. That was Prabhupada's genius. He says, if they just try the chanting, whatever other ideas they have and everything, that will be a way in which they can experience something immediately. It's not the full panoply of realization of God consciousness, but it's something unique that will draw them back to the process and to the philosophy, and to me, Prabhupada speaking, so that they can become purified and then realize more and more and become themselves agents of passing on this wonderful practice. I mean, when you think, my realizations are very small, but just looking back on these 50 years, and where my contemporaries of those days are, I haven't kept in touch with them, but I'm just looking out at, the situation in this world, and so much hope in this direction on material platform of trying to build something here and create a wholesome and prosperous society, but being frustrated, and people becoming very discouraged, depressed, and going into illegal substances to try to deal with life and all this, that. I have absolutely no desire to take any toxicants at all, If I want to get high, I'll just chant a few shlokas. Very wholesome. Wasn't there a little pamphlet? Prabhupada said he authorized Lower East Side. Everyone was taking drugs, and his young disciples, many of them had taken drugs, and he said, "This is much better." They weren't like all of them sneaking off and smoking dope or anything, or taking LSD. And so they said, Prabhupada, we can put a pamphlet called "Stay High Forever," because there's so many young people out there trying to get high. He said, yes, you can do it. You authorize it. This is really high. When you read the Chaitanya Charitamrita and you see the transformation of consciousness and how Lord Chaitanya and his disciples and followers, they were becoming maddened with ecstasy, with love for Krishna. It looks like, but it's wholesome. At the end of the day, there's a big feast, and everyone goes home, sleeps soundly. It's not that it ends up as, oh no, now I have to go take a drug again. No. Admittedly, when they wake up again and start chanting, that's true. But the point is, it's natural and wholesome, and it's actually the best thing for everyone. So here Krishna is he's starting to summarize a little bit, and he's promising that one who understands this philosophy concerning material nature, living entity, and the interaction of the modes of nature is sure to attain liberation, will not take birth again, regardless of his present position. So this is an inducement to really understand it, and as I say, live by it. We just had our one of my favorite verses, 22, which I'll refer to again. Purushak prakatisto hi bhunkte prakati jangunan karanang gunasangosya sadasadyoni janmasu. So the Purusha, that's us. The soul is really Prakriti by nature, energy, trying to act as an enjoyer. So he says Purusha, situated within material nature, Prakritisto. We're in material nature. Bhunkte here doesn't mean just enjoy, but it means to experience. Prakriti Jan Gunan experiences the three modes of nature generated, Jan, from Prakriti. And as we, Karananguna Sangha, so as we associate with the modes of nature, now there's a certain amount of freedom there. We can decide, I don't want to be situated in the mode of ignorance anymore. I'm going to go to a psychotherapist and see if I can get into the mode of passion. Then it's a success. Someone who's really involved in life and wants to try to enjoy. Yes, that's one of my successes. But that's not a success. Even if you get up to the mode of goodness, it's not good enough. So, but we can choose to a large degree how we associate with the modes of nature. We have free agency, and we can cultivate the mode of goodness, passion, ignorance. And as we do that, that determines our destiny. Sadasadyoni janmasu. That determines whether we are born in a favorable situation or in a very unfavorable situation. That's what Sadasadyoni means, is a good or bad birth. So what he's saying is that this is in your hands. We have free agency. But the problem is if we don't have any process of devotional service like this to come in touch with the higher power of Krishna, then we're going to be simply choosing between bad choices within the material energy. Become, okay, that's it. I'm not taking another drink, And, okay, I get tempted along the way, but if you take good association, you go to AA, then you can become sober and clean. Yes, I told this story, I think, Sunday about AA. Did I mention? What I didn't mention, maybe I didn't describe, he asked me to come up and give a speech, because there are a lot of things that are similar, So usually, I have been going up there and kind of just I come like this, okay, what's this? And then it says, my name, this is what I would have said, my name is Dravida Das, and I'm an alcoholic. But I have this, they have these little, coins that they give out. 6 months, 1 year, So I have a coin, it's 40 years. I used to drink beer when I was 18, but I was very fortunate because I took a little too much, I got sick, Actually, that's a great boon, I never got, too into it too much, obviously. So I didn't give that kind of talk, but I did say a few words, and I mentioned how there are things, the idea of faith in a higher power. Now it's completely non-sectarian, so it's mention God or anything, but that's what they're talking about. And the strength that comes through association. You come to AA, and there's others encourage you. Hey, I made it 6 months. Come on, you can do it. And so this way they gather strength. That also works for devotees. That's the value of sadhu sangha, So there's similarities there, but of course there's limits because their goal is to just be a normal person. But normal person means you're still in Maya, and you still ultimately suffer birth, old age, disease, and death. But the idea is that we are trying to get entrance back into our original situation, where there's no longer any downside, there's no longer any danger. You're not in the world of dualities. This is the world of dualities. There's good and bad, there'll be some pleasure and pains, all these different things, and ultimately you die. And according to what you've done, it's not up to you, but it's a higher power of recording, you're going to get a certain destination. And it may be an animal body, whatever it may be. So people don't know this. That's why the first lesson is always you're a spirit soul, you're eternal. You've had previous bodies, but you forgot. And you have no idea of your future. So take this knowledge, and in this way you can get the best future. I was just going over these couple of verses from the 5th chapter, 1st canto, which probably will quote all the time, which really are kind of, if you believe them, it's an impetus to take up transcendental life. So Narada Muni is speaking to Vyasadeva, inspiring him to write the Bhagavatam. It's a critical part of history, actually. But without the Bhagavatam, we wouldn't have this movement. So he says, because you have Varnashram Dharma is there kind of established. And this is a way of organizing society into the Varnas, the social classes, the Brahman, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudras, and the spiritual classes, or the orders of Brahmachari, Grihasthas, Vanaprastha, Sannyas. So he's saying here, Tyaktva swadharmam chadanam bhajan hare bhajan apakvo tapate tato yadi yatra kvava badram amushikim kovarta apto abhadatam swadharmataha. So what he's saying there is, if someone gives up his duties within the Varnashram system, and he simply worships Hari, joins the Hare Krishnas, chadanam bhajan hare, and he worships the lotus feet of Hari, chadanam bhajan hare. But his bhajan is a pakva. Now pakva means to cook. So it means that it's not well done. In other words, he or she falls away without completing the course. Happens all the time. Bhajan apakvo tapate, they fall down, tato yadi. Where is there anything inauspicious? Because as Krishna promises repeatedly in the Bhagavad Gita, there's no loss or diminution. Right in the 2nd chapter, very encouraging, nehabhikramanasosti pratyabhayo navidyate. In this endeavor, there is no loss and no diminution. And even a little advancement can protect one from the most fearful type of danger. I'm trying to adjust that, because that's what Prabhupada means. The most fearful type of danger, which is that you lose the human form of life and go back down. So what a deal. Even if you just chant a couple of mantras, attend one Bhagavad Gita class, where I'm reading Prabhupada's book, you're sure of a human birth. What a boon. Whereas the people outside, you could be millionaire, billionaire. You're probably sure of an animal birth if you get that, what it takes to become a billionaire. But anyway, there's no assurance. So Narada Muni is saying the same thing. He says, where is there any loss for such a person? Where he tries to advance, but he couldn't, but he gave up his swadharma. But on the other hand, someone who very nicely performs all his duties in Varnashram, but has no bhakti, where is there any gain? You're not gaining anything, because you're completely at the mercy of your karma, and you may very well lose your human form of life. Therefore, the next verse, tasyaiva heto prayate kobino nalabhyate yad brahmatam aparyada talabhyate dukkhavadanyakak sukham kalena sarvata gabhira rangasa. Prabhupada quoted these verses constantly. Therefore, one should strive for that goal, which you haven't achieved by going up and down the forms of life and up and down the universe and whatever, all of your sojourn in this material world. That which you haven't. In other words, you should try for going back home, back to Godhead, achieving perfection. Because, and then he says this theme which comes up again in the Bhagavatam. Nalabhyate brahmatama talabhyate dukkhavadanyakak sukham kalena sarvata gabhira rangasa. You've sort of programmed in here how much happiness and how much distress you're going to experience, material happiness and distress in this material life. You can't increase it. You may try like anything. Oh, now I'm successful. I achieved something. Now I can really enjoy. But the amount of happiness that you're going to enjoy, either if you try, you're still going to achieve 120 points of happiness. That's what it's going to be. You may think, well, now I'm really situated. I got a good, I have a home in San Diego, very rare. And, a good wife, some nice kids, nice job, and everything like that. But let's face it, material energy is completely unpredictable. Just look at these floods that are going on. People, they got their dream, in the mountains of California, Then the snow comes, 10 feet of snow. They're locked in. They're running out of food. It just happened 2 weeks ago. You can't predict. It's all programmed in. There's higher powers that are moving you around on the chessboard. So, therefore, it doesn't make sense to strive for material happiness and spend your whole time in that and warding off material distress. Rather, whatever time you have, whatever opportunity you have, you should work for your eternal good fate, even if you can't achieve it in this one lifetime. That's the idea. And this is so encouraging for Srila Prabhupada, because he realized, if I can just give them even 1%, it's invaluable. So let me strive as much as possible. You see? So this is an impetus for the preachers, don't to give up on anyone. Because someone may take 10% and then he's also giving a book to someone who then may become a full divine time devotee. It's like the ultimate in multi-level marketing, isn't it? And there's no laws of diminution, Anyway, I'm getting a little far afield. So, any questions on this verse? Krishna is promising success. You will not take birth again, and regardless of a present, if one can understand this philosophy concerning material nature, living in any interaction and modes of nature. And that implies, of course, the presence of the Supersoul. So that's another impetus for taking the process seriously. Yes?
Hare Krishna.
So he says, what is that? If he understands the philosophy, but so it doesn't matter. Someone understands the philosophy deeply, but he doesn't chant rounds, he doesn't do any seva, he doesn't do all the things. He's still...
No, that's what I mentioned first.
Yes, I got confused a moment. Yeah.
Really, real understanding, because what does it mean to understand? Like for instance, this list of 20 parts of knowledge. They are, a lot of these are imperatives. You have to be humble, with free of false pride. And amanatvam adambitvam. Damba means pretentious pride, being proud of something you really don't deserve. There's that pretension part of it. So these are activities, and what does it understand? It means understand. I forget how the Sanskrit goes, but uninterrupted devotion to me. That's one of the process of knowledge. He says this is the most important one. All the others come from that. Well, you don't understand. It's not that you just understand what the words mean. That's not what it means. It means that you understand it, you take it in, and you act on it. So that's what is meant. Because otherwise you've got, Sanskrit scholars, people teaching this in college, they understand how to pronounce the Sanskrit and what the words mean. But what does their understanding actually mean? It doesn't go beyond just book knowledge, you understand? That's the difference. All right, let's proceed. Dhyanen atmani pashyanti kechanatmanam atmana Anye sankena yogena karma yogena chapare. Some perceive the Supersoul within themselves through meditation, others through the cultivation of knowledge, and still others through working without fruit of desires. Purport. The Lord informs Arjuna that the conditioned souls can be divided into two classes as far as man's search for self-realization is concerned. Those who are atheists, agnostics, and skeptics are beyond the sense of spiritual understanding. But there are others who are faithful in their understanding of spiritual life, and they are called introspective devotees, philosophers, and workers who have renounced fruitive results. Those who always try to establish the doctrine of monism are also counted among the atheists and agnostics. In other words, only the devotees of the Supreme Personality of Godhead are best situated in spiritual understanding, because they understand that beyond this material nature are the spiritual world and the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is expanded as the Paramatma, the Supersoul in everyone, the all-pervading Godhead. Of course, there are those who try to understand the Supreme Absolute Truth by cultivation of knowledge, and they can be counted in the class of the faithful. The Sankhya philosophers analyze this material world into 24 elements, and they place the individual soul as the 25th item. When they are able to understand the nature of the individual soul to be transcendental to the material elements, they are able to understand also that above the individual soul, there is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He is the 26th element. Thus, gradually, they also come to the standard of devotional service in Krishna consciousness. Those who work without fruitive results are also perfect in their attitude. They are given a chance to advance to the platform of devotional service in Krishna consciousness. Here it is stated that there are some people who are pure in consciousness and who try to find out the Supersoul by meditation. And when they discover the Supersoul within themselves, they become transcendentally situated. Similarly, there are others who also try to understand the Supreme Soul by cultivation of knowledge, and there are others who cultivate the Hatha Yoga system and who try to satisfy the Supreme Personality of Godhead by childish activities. So they're not very successful. So this is kind of a list of those who are transcendentalists, but they're not in the category of pure devotees, obviously. But as the idea is that if they come within the association of devotees with any of those attitudes in which they're trying to detach themselves from just ordinary material life and understand the Supersoul or the individual soul, then they can come in contact and see how everything fits together. If you understand the Bhagavad Gita, especially Bhagavatam, then all of these elements become clear. Where the Supersoul fits in, or what the relation with the soul, what this material energy is, how it's working according to the modes of nature. And most importantly, with that understanding comes the method and the means of, while in this material world, using the material world, beginning with our own body, for connecting to the Supreme Godhead and reviving our original love for Him. That's what bhakti is all about. And experiencing the spiritual even on this plane, and then leaving the spiritual world, for this material world for good, and going back to the spiritual world. So you have to come to the point of bhakti to fully understand Krishna. That'll become very clear in the 18th chapter. This conclusive verse, Bhakti amam avijanati yavanyaschasmi tatvataha. If you want to understand me in truth, then you have to practice bhakti. And if you do that and you do it successfully, then you can re-enter into the spiritual world. So, but all of these different, this is again in the mood of the 12th chapter. Remember the 12th, well, okay, if you're not able to practice bhakti yoga right now, then just be generous. Don't become conditioned by your fruitive activities, but try to be renounced and give the fruits of your labor as far as possible away. And so Krishna is very liberal in that chapter, in the 12th chapter. If you can't do this, then do this. If you can't do that, then at least do this. And this is almost something like the way that the Prabhupada, preached. Okay, don't worry about it. Practicing renunciation right now. You just come to the Sunday festival and join us in the kirtan, listen to a little talk, and take prasadam, and associate with devotees, And in that way, by sadhu sangha, then your attitude is changed. You become attracted, because Krishna is all attracted. So that's what Krishna is saying here. Some perceive the Supersoul in this way, others through cultivation of knowledge, others fruitive working without fruitive desires. Okay, so that's one way to stay within the realm of those who are trying to be transcendentalists. And if you're following Krishna's instructions here, there's a connection, and gradually it can be purified. So it's very ecumenical, so to speak. Okay. Yes, please. You can put a mat in between and just put the mic right on it.
Oh, that's a good idea. So the very last sentence of the purport, so you said that it's saying, right, if you can't do this, you can at least do this. But it kind of, because it says that Hatha Yoga is trying to satisfy the Supreme Personality of Godhead by childish activities, is Prabhupada saying there that Hatha Yoga will, after a long time, eventually lead to it? Or is he saying that it's just childish?
It's childish.
Okay.
he's revealing a little bit of what he learned in New York. You know? He saw the Hatha Yoga as it is practiced, you know, which is watered down. It basically there's not much. It's not that much transcendental about it generally, and so it's good for the health. But my experience is that, you know, I went to the Hatha Yoga studio, and there was a bookstore, and in the bookstore, because the devotees had been there, there was this little print. There wasn't a big print of Krishna Balaram, one of those paintings. And of course I was open to it, but I just got fascinated by that picture. And then there was also the Hatha Yoga group I was in. There was also some meditation. It was like integral. That was what the name of it was. So there was bending and stretching. There was a little pranayama. We had a little kirtan for 5 minutes. You know, chanting a variety of mantras. Om Namo Shivaya, please. Oh God. Om Namo Shivaya. Om Namo Shivaya. And one of the mantras was Hare Krishna. So at that time I thought, well, the most obvious mantra I'm going to use for meditating is Om, because that's the most famous. So I tried hard to meditate on Om, and I did it for some time. Tried hard for some time, but it didn't work for me, you know. So then I went to their bookstore. I was just browsing. I wasn't looking, and there was this whole booklet about the Hare Krishna mantra, because the guru of the guru who's running this ashram had supposedly been in South Africa for some time, and he had a Khanda Kirtan of Hare Krishna mantra. Who knew? You know, and there was all of these wonderful essays by people I didn't know with Indian names about the glories of the Hare Krishna mantra. So that's my mantra. I'll pick it. I chose it. This was before I visited the temple. And then, so having chanted that and seeing that painting, I naturally became curious about who this Krishna was, and so I eventually visited and got the books, and you know, I became. But it started out with me just wanting to improve my health. So Hatha Yoga, you know, I wasn't consciously trying to please the Lord by my childish activities, but by my good fortune, it led eventually to the temple and Krishna. And the real thing. Huh? But it doesn't usually. Doesn't usually. Yeah, you can stay on that platform because it works. If you bend and stretch and do the thing, you really feel much better. And if that's all you're looking for, that's all you get. Yeah. All right, should we proceed?
Quick question.
Yes, sir.
On mantra. Is there a mic?
Oh, it's over there. It's all. Yeah, we have to reposition these mics better.
Hare Krishna.
Hari Bol, Arjun.
So, Prabhu, quick question on mantra like Om Namah Shivaya or Om and Hare Krishna. My experience with Maha Mantra, I feel more joyful and sweetness. I feel that rasa, like that essence. But with Om Namah Shivaya, I feel more peace. But at what point I start feeling peaceful with Maha Mantra also? I feel the sweetness, but I don't feel the peace which is there in the Om Namah Shivaya part of it.
But you said now, after some time with Hare Krishna, you also feel peaceful.
I feel more happy and joyous.
Well,
is it more chanting one needs to do to feel peaceful, or it just happens naturally?
Everything is there in the Hare Krishna. I mean, after all, Shiva is worshiping Krishna. You know what he says. Parvati asks, what is the most important, what is the best form of worship? Aradhananam sarvesham, Vishnu aradhanam param. Tasmat, what is it? Tasmat paratamam devi, tadiyanam samarchanam. So of all forms of worship, the worship of Vishnu is the best. But even better than that is the worship of those who are related to Vishnu, in other words, his devotees. So the ultimate, Shanti, you can look in the Bhagavad Gita, in the 2nd chapter, Vihaya kama niksavam pumchadati nikspraha, nirmamo nadahankara sashanti madigachati. Who can really attain peace? So he says, one who gives up all material desires, nikspraha, lives free of those desires, and has nirmamo nadahankara, doesn't have a sense of separate proprietorship, and no false ego. The real ego, I'm a servant of Krishna. So that gives the ultimate in peace. That isn't, because you can have relative peace for some time, but then it breaks and you're back into a non-peaceful life. So to really have the extended peace, you have to live in that consciousness, and that's a devotional consciousness, that you don't have any material desires. I mean, this is pure devotee. Doesn't have any sense of separate thing. Everything belongs to Krishna and is used in his service as far as possible. And who am I? I'm Jiva Sodapur Krishna Nityadas. My nature is according to God in the form of Lord Chaitanya, who's Krishna, to be an eternal servant of Krishna. So when you're situated in that, then that's the most peaceful you can be. But yeah, I mean, my experience is that once I came to this chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra, that seemed to be completely fulfilling, And really I joined up because I was looking for that ashram where, it wasn't like, okay, now it's time to stop chanting, and now we're going to do this and stand on our heads. No, they never say that. The more you chant, the more you're successful in Hare Krishna. I remember that, like the first days I actually moved in, I was taking out the trash, typical thing for a new bhakta, take out the job. And I was just, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. So the bhakta who was in charge of me, he got initiated real soon after that, but he had been around for a while. He said, Bhakta Tom, I think you're going to make it, because you're happy while taking out the trash, And, so many hours washing the pots, probably take that up again. But it was always, there was always a way to be very happy by just connecting with Krishna and feeling the connection with him, And the peace kind of comes naturally. Okay, what the time is? Oh, it's 8:04. Okay. A question, please.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. So Lord Buddha is an incarnation of Lord Krishna. But Buddhism is impersonal. So does that path also lead to the same platform as?
Well, there's interesting facts about Lord Buddha. The way Prabhupada described it is that the Mayavadis kind of took over India at a certain point, early, I don't know, a couple thousand years ago. And so how to, and not only that, but, no, I'm sorry, I have it wrong. What happened was that there was, because of the age of Kali Yuga, there were certain parts of the Vedas that where there's cow sacrifice for, it's not mass slaughter, but it's a sacrifice where the animal gets a new body and everything like that. It's very restricted. But because of the corruption of Kali Yuga, people were taking advantage of that, and they were starting to slaughter cows. And so, on the basis of the Vedas. So Krishna came as Buddha, and he preached nonviolence, but denied the authority of the Vedas. And so he was able to spread this message, and people, they weren't worshiping Vishnu or God, they were just worshiping him. But he was an incarnation of Vishnu, so they were also worshiping God that way. But in order for people to really prosper and spiritually, the authority of the Vedas had to be returned. And so that was Shankaracharya. Shankaracharya was actually an expansion of Shiva. He was a sign told by Vishnu to preach Mayavad, because it was covered Buddhism, and it would reestablish the authority of the Vedas, Vedanta Sutra. That's Vedic literature. So he did that, and then came Ramanuja and Yamunacharya and others, Madhva, to refute the Mayavad and reestablish the authority of the Vedas on the basis of this Achintya Beta Tattva and so forth. That was Lord Chaitanya. But so that was a big battle, and it's still going on to some degree. But that's the reason for Buddha, is that to curb the cow slaughter on the basis of this ahimsa philosophy. And there were people who would worship him, but it wasn't based on personalism. So they said, no, don't worship God, just worship me, but he's God. So in this way they were fooled, So there's those aspects of it. So but Buddhism, if you stick with it, and this whole thing of voidness, void philosophy, that's an offshoot. It's similar to Mayavad, and that's not going to get you anywhere. It's a very interesting purport in 4th chapter, text 10, where Prabhupada talks about these 3 different ways that your people are prevented from taking up devotion. Vita, Raga, Bhaya, Krodha. There's 2 things. Raga. Raga means, in this context, material desire. And this is the vast number of people. They're too absorbed in trying to enjoy the material energy and trying to ward off the pains of the material energy. So they're not interested. They can't take up. And then Bhaya, Vita, Raga, Bhaya, Krodha. So Bhaya means fear. And fear is what the impersonalists are. They're afraid of taking another form, of having any kind of form, because form means this body, and this body means suffering, birth, old age, disease, and death. So the perfection must be simply merging into the spirit with no form, no variety, no pastime, no nothing, just consciousness. That's the ideal. No more birth, old age, disease, and death. That's the Mayavad ideal. But it's a failure. And it's explained that in failure in the Bhagavatam, because our natural state is not to simply be purely conscious of the white light, but to have a spiritual form relating to Krishna, full of senses and things and activities, name, form, qualities, pastimes, in the spiritual world. So they fall down again. They come down again from there, because you can't remain in that unnatural state. Although it's nice you're free of birth, old age, and disease, and death. But finally you say, let me go down and I'll take birth, old age, and disease, but at least I'll have something to do. At least I'll have some relationship, some rasa.
That's Brahma Jyoti, right?
The Brahma Jyoti. Yeah, the Brahma Jyoti is not fulfilling. So then there's the Krodha. Krodha means anger, and that's like the Buddhists, the radical impersonalists, the voidists. That they've been cheated so many different philosophies that they're, rather than, let's just void out, we'll ultimately not exist, in this way we won't take birth again and everything. But that's very frustrating. And they said often they take the various kinds of intoxicants, and they take their, this is an editing pastime, Prabhupada said they're effective hallucinations. And our first editor said, well, it can't be effective, it must be affective. There's a psychological term, affect. You know what the affect is? But Prabhupada would never use that word in a million years. What he was saying was that the resultant, effective means the effect, the resultant hallucinations they take as spiritual visions. And he was experiencing that. This is, so those 3 things, Raga, Bhaya, Krodha, will prevent someone from taking up bhakti. But if they can suspend all that and come in touch with bhakti, a genuine bhakta, then you can navigate and actually come to the proper conclusion. All right, we're almost out of time, so just a short little poem, because I always have to have the end of the poem. So this is an old favorite. Maduram, maduram, vapadasya vibhor. Maduram, maduram, vadanam, maduram. Madhugandhi madhusmita meta, the whole maduram, 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 maduram. Bilvamangal Thakur says, sweet, sweet is my dear Lord's form. Sweet is still his face so fair, but his honey-scented gentle smile is sweet beyond compare. All glories to the Prabhupada. Haribol. And now we will see Giridhari's wonderful form, face, and smile.